Welcome, relational leaders and listeners. This is Cultivate, your podcast destination where we celebrate thriving relational leaders and encourage each other along the influence journey. I am Wendy F. Adams, your host and strategic guide. In each episode, I will engage with leaders who are sharing authentic stories that support impactful influence. I believe work shouldn't be a four-letter word, but should inspire, challenge, and fulfill. Through a high challenge and high support model, we will explore the recipe for relational leadership that drives meaningful change. You will gain insights from leaders who face the same challenges you may encounter and discover strategies to navigate them with resilience and purpose. She's led through mergers, mentored executives, and now champions a mission where young lives are transformed daily. Tanique Dunkley brings more than HR expertise. She brings heart, grit, and a deep belief in what's possible when people lead on purpose. From the halls of Columbia to the soul of Harlem at Brotherhood Sister Soul, she's not just building teams, she's building legacies. In this episode, Tanique gets real about the cost, the calling, and the courage it takes to lead with conviction. If you're seeking healthy leadership engagement in an open, empowering, and authentic environment, then you're in the right place. After all, as leaders, we're either driving progress or we're driving the problem. So let's grow together. Well, welcome to a fresh episode of Cultivate. And today we are thrilled to have an inspiring, people-centered leader join us on the show. Tanique Dunkley, Human Resources Director at Brotherhood Sister Soul. Tanique, we are excited to have you join us for the Cultivate experience.
Thank you, Wendy. It is wonderful to be here this morning, glorious morning, and I'm really excited to jump in.
And that's exactly what we're going to do. We are jumping straight in, my friend. The audience knows that when we get started, it is at a fast pace because the time flies. And now that they're fired up, let's do that very thing. You know, Tanique, I've had the pleasure of, in our green room time, getting to know you and how that plays into your leadership based on what I love to say is the why. And I know that from that why, you believe that potential is endless when people lead on purpose. And I've been sitting in that since you said it and we had that original conversation. I want you to share that foundation of your why and how it is directly impacting your work at Brotherhood Sister Soul.
Thank you for that question. Yes, I mean, when we first got together and you reached out, just thinking about our journeys, which I feel like everyone has. So
Yes.
the why for me is personal, but the good news is that everyone has a why. And it has been a lifelong journey to uncover, discover the why. I definitely have memories and decision points and critical moments throughout life that have informed some of my why. But as I get older, it really talks more about just what is possible. And I feel what is possible is something that 5-year-old me, if I had known that that's all it is, now, again, journeys would be different, but I hope they would be just as fruitful. So I go through life every morning. Every morning I wake up is wanting to impart on everyone that I meet just their potential, what is possible, and the decisions, the micro decisions, the things we think about, the ways we think about ourselves every day are collective. They're individual thoughts that create a collective experience that is individual, but then we can also share. So a lot of the why for me is just every day is different, but there are certain things that are grounded, and that's what I've learned over all these decades of being in different spaces is that there are things that come to us that are the same, but each day is an opportunity to do something different if we choose. And choice is, I've been thinking a lot about just, the whole concept of what, empowerment back in the 90s. It was kind of a thing. 2000s, definitely with this generation, absolutely, wanting to be empowered. And, I've challenged myself with coming up with what is the definition of empowered? People throw around this word, but what does it mean for me? And I have settled for the past few years on empowerment is understanding the true choices available to us and being able to access them. Once we're able to do that, I feel like whatever those choices and those actions are, someone has the opportunity to feel empowered with it.
I mean, Tanique, you have taken us into such a deep space, and we're like 3 minutes in. This is so great. I mean, because what I'm hearing through that, and I have a love for emerging leaders and speaking into that space. I just really enjoy it. And I hear you talking about your 5-year-old self. And I think back to, and the year I usually drop on is 7. And what if I knew then what I know now? And I realized that yes, it would have been great to an extent. I'm really that same person as far as bright-eyed and open and looking for potential and seeking that hope. And that is what I understand. And we're going to dig into that. That's what you're able to do, you and your team, with Brotherhood Sister Soul, right? Or Bro Sis.
Yeah.
I love that the work that you're doing is saying, let's not just get stuck in what's happening today and the circumstances that are in front of us. Yes, we have to be aware, but let's talk about what we do have control over and how we can speak into those who are coming behind us, right? The work that we're doing is not just about us. It's the legacy we leave and how that's walked out. And so I want to ask you, if there's a pivotal moment or a lot of times we call a personal value that most shaped how you actually lead today.
I think the value that shapes how I lead is empathy. Being able to put myself in someone else's shoes and imagine. And I think, and I think, I have to take a step back because I say that by thanking first my ancestors, because I do believe that a lot of the things that I intuit and that I know are not from necessarily this present lifetime, but they're a culmination of the DNA. I call it the dinner that's in us, right? The things that got us here, that is with that we don't understand, that science can't explain yet, but that we know, that gut. So a lot of that empathy that I bring, I'm able to be in tune, right? To hear, to see people. I think sometimes before they even understand and see themselves in certain ways, and to see that potential. And I don't take that very lightly. It's been a conversation for 40 years with a lot of my friends in the circles that I am in, to say, how did you know that I'd be able to do that? Or you gave me this confidence. And I was like, I didn't give you anything. I gave suggestions, right? I see actually many different paths sometimes. And I hone in on one that I find is the most fruitful for someone. But again, it's micro decisions that happen and I'm not in control. So a lot of my journey I've had what I call a gift. I used to say, is it a gift or a curse? Because when you can't necessarily control, which is another thing that I kind of work through in terms of what is control, what can I influence, and that's why I use the word influence versus control. I go to people and I say, here's what I see. Here's a pathway, but ultimately it's up to them, and that's where I have to just sit on my hands. And so I think I lead with empathy, knowing the potential, but knowing that not everyone will, necessarily do the things that I think will lead them to their best self. And that's not my choice. That's not my thing. So it's to sit back, but not to give in or give up on that. And also to be surprised. I talked at the beginning about many days being surprised. I mean, my path has always not been set, but has been very specific, cultivated. But the moments in life where, when I think about my team and the folks that I engage with now, especially the youth, they surprise me because I just did not see that. I didn't see that, and that takes a lot for me to say, is that I didn't see that, because I pride myself on being able to be expansive in what's possible and think. But some of the most amazing experiences have been Tanique. put a couple things in the pot and let the pot create what it needs to create. It's not up to you. And that has been humbling and exhilarating at the same time.
Well, I think you gave us this beautiful picture of what empowerment truly is. First of all, I love that you made it a point to differentiate and define really what leadership is. It's not control, it's influence. We know it, but you painted a beautiful picture of, and that is how then you walk out that empowerment, right? You're going to call those up. This has got to be a great superpower in the role that you are in as you're leading out the human capacity at your organization and speaking into those. Then you turn around and say, not just your team, but then those that you are serving, obviously in your community, to really teach what empowerment is and how we do have to take our hands off of the wheel in that space, because it's not a control. We're going to provide information. We're going to educate. We're going to, and you said it, we're going to be curious, right? You're surprised
Mhm.
by some of the responses, but that means you're being curious in that space. And I know for me, that's an area that I intentionally have to work on, and not say, hey, I see what, but to ask the question as to why that choice, or why are you thinking that way? Tell me more. And that's a place and space that I think really speaks into that true empowerment and that influence you were talking about. When we want to talk about, and this is what it is, transformational leadership and living, what's been your approach to bringing both structure, because there's obviously structure in human resources, and support into an organization that is so deeply rooted in community and that transformational work, which is messy?
Mhm.
So, how do you balance both of those?
Yeah, thank you for that question because it's something that I think about deeply.
Mm,
I think because I've settled in a place where sometimes the richest parts of life is living within the duality of things. So one of the reasons why I made the pivot to the process, and to work with youth, and people who are empowering youth is I wanted something new. I wanted
mm-hmm.
to With this stage of my life, there's a lot that I've known and I've grown and I feel like I have certain command over, but the part that I don't is the part that actually interests me. So being able to live in duality, to say I am this expert, as others say X Y Z, but there is this social justice, social conscious, human aspect of people that I actually don't know that much about, and that vulnerability of
Mm,
being a student again. I've been here for a little over a year. I spent my first 6 months just listening and learning around not organizational design. I know those things, right? But how someone in a social justice organization that has grown tremendously in the past 3 years, how they think about, leadership, how they think about management, and how different it is, right? Because their lens is we care, right? We care so deeply that we give our all to 24/7 coverage. That's one of the unique things about Process 24/7. And I thought to myself,
mm,
as a employee, how can that be sustainable? Right? What
yes.
do what do I need to think about in order for you not to burn out? I mean, on Wall Street, in management consulting, I mean, burnout was such a, you know,
So real.
it's such an expected thing. Here, it
Mm-hmm.
necessarily wasn't expected because people, their why was so entrenched with who they are and how they show up each day. So what brought me here is thinking about how to use and bring in the tools and the techniques that and programs that I have taken for throughout all these years, but make it sustainable to them, and even actually introduce. Do you realize that sustainability is a thing, right? That, and it doesn't mean you care less. It just means you
No.
have capacity even further to do this work. So from the HR lens, coming in and actually not learning and listening in terms of how you do the work in order to be able to introduce um, more sustainable programs like taking vacation, or how important it is to pause or to take that time out and and looking at our calendar and figuring out, people say, I'm too busy, I'm too this, I'm too that. So here's how we have to structure our cycle in order to build those things in. And now I'm at the stage where actually introducing things like that and seeing the wonder of, oh, I can take a time out for myself and my family, and I don't have to feel guilty. I don't have to feel, no, because we have redundancies now, right? We're growing to an organization. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just getting excited in this space. One, your vulnerability is beautiful, right? And that is something that really takes, I feel very personally, leaders from that place of excellence to extraordinary is when you can be vulnerable and say, I do need a break. There does need to be that space. Margin is a good thing. You mentioned like not looking at sustainability as a place of I don't care enough or leaders not caring enough. Dare I say it's showing how much they actually do care to say what we're doing is so important for today, but beyond us. That's why we have to take those pauses and those step backs and those breaks so that this continues on. It's actually a greater amount of care that comes through in that space. But for you and your team and your leadership, which we're going to get to that, to be able to say that openly and live it out, because it's one thing to say it, but when you actually put the PTO request, when
Yes.
you actually take the
Yeah.
time off and the team and your colleagues can see that happen, now you're emulating. That is the type of leadership that's sticky,
Yeah.
right? And that's what we want. I'm curious because you're speaking into those on your team, obviously, and the rest of the community and teammates that are in the organization. How does this translate when you have to lead up with your senior leaders, and hopefully you're having a seat at that decision making table? How do you help leaders align their influence with the mission, especially when we have these really high pressure situations and we're dealing with the messiness of lives?
Yeah. I think this is where the concept of that duality comes back to me,
Mm,
right? In because I grew up in a very old school, right, where excellence is not a compromise, right? So that's part of that foundation for me. So having a plan, that's how I do.
yes.
Have a plan, and
Yes.
have a plan that is thoughtful and holistic, that takes the goals of every stakeholder into account, and finding that mix and that blend. So part of that is for our C-suite, who are extremely focused on our people. So I have this technique where I used to cheekily say, I'm going to use your words against you. or when you told me something, let's make sure that that's really, because I'm going to remember that and I'm going to hold that accountable, right? So when we say people first, right? And we
Yes.
have, goals that we need to accomplish, but something happens to someone. How do we make sure that our messaging to our staff and to folks is that we want you to take care of yourself and your family, and how do we make sure that those services are still being had, grants are still going out, deadlines are still being met. So having a plan, and also understanding where, before the emergency happens, before life happens, where the places you can pull in if needed, right? So that means actually skilling people, not in
Mm-hmm.
silos, but to think broadly. So I believe in, if people understand their role in something and where they may need to pull in, or help out down the road, and that they're equipped to do that. And it's not going to be necessarily a surprise, but they're going to feel this is go time. It has a better chance of being able to, when something happens, we have a plan. And I can say to C-suite, we're still going to hit that target. Or you know what? Let's actually, part of our role is to advocate. Let's push that target back, and here's the why. But then we're going to make it, because we have these contingencies already lined up. But we just need a little bit more time in order to hit that in an authentic way. So being able,
I love it, and you hit it in an authentic way,
yeah,
right? Because all of your stakeholders, internal and external, will sniff that out
mhm,
if it is anything but authentic and say, but are we really walking that talk?
yeah,
I think that that beautiful picture that you just painted of what we affectionately speak out here at Cultivate is that high challenge and high support. That's a leader that is worth following, right? Because you actually are coming alongside and saying, I see you, I hear you. Life is lifing, as the young folks say.
Mhm.
And we have these goals that are set before us because of the commitments we've made to our community. What do we need to put in place so both can happen? It's a both and not an either or. You brought in that space of authentic and authenticity and how important that is. It's important for us to be authentic on what is, what isn't, and how we walk through those challenging times. So I want to get a little bit really frank, not that we haven't been, and dig in a little bit to some of the tougher spaces for you personally. You lead from the front. That's what human resources does. And what's a moment that you questioned your capacity to keep going and being in this space? Has that been something that you've actually had to realize in your space?
Oh, absolutely. A couple times, pivotal times in my career. My previously, I was the head of HR for Columbia's Arts and Sciences,
Mm,
and that was they were a nonprofit,
intense.
but a very very intense. And I was in that role for 10 years prior, um, and it got to a point. I mean, I had been there because I saw the good work that needed to be done and the transformation. But I definitely hit a point where it was just too overwhelming. And the return, so, my Wall Street days, my return on investment, which was
Mm,
myself and my health, did not match up. That was
yes.
not a model that I thought was a sustained. So it was how do I exit that? And honestly, I didn't. It was hard to leave. I couldn't. The universe had to do it for me. And when it
Mm,
happened, I had the opportunity to leave. I didn't fight it, and that was the one moment I realized I was like, okay, I think I'm understanding this control lesson, right? The only thing constant is change,
yes.
and sometimes we think we know, but sometimes we get some help. So I look at life as like this. I don't know if you remember the board game Life, right? All the signs and all, all the things, and sometimes it takes something greater than us to say you need a timeout and you need to repurpose and you need to, and I always say, wouldn't it be best to be in control of that change versus it being something health related, something traumatic that makes
Mm,
us stop. Sometimes that's what life does because we are so stubborn and so strong that we want to just we can't conceive like stopping means failing somehow. Um,
yes.
but it really, I mean, again, if I go back to my old selves, there are times when, yeah, so that was it for me. Sometimes, I wasn't strong enough. And I think that's part of my message is that, I always used to say people go on these TED Talks and they talk about when they made it to the other side. I want to hear someone talk about when the struggle was real and they weren't
Mm,
sure they would
that's
make it to
it.
the other side. And I was like, to me, that's because those are the moments that I have all the time, right? That people have
And that's where we do
that,
so much growth.
that
That sustainable growth that we were talking about happens in those gritty tough times where resiliency, and we know that that can feel like a very lonely place. You said the word silo earlier. We have to make sure that we invite others into that space with us. And when we bring that vulnerability to the table and others go, "But you too?"
hmm
Now we're not. Now we know
yeah,
that we're not the only ones in that place and space. And how much stronger are we collectively? You've said that, right? This is a collective work that we're doing to be able to keep it going for when the next opportunity opens and this chapter ends and it's on to the next. The work that you're doing at Brosis and what's happening here, what was happening at Columbia, it's not based on us and shouldn't stop at that point in time. We've got to be the healthiest that we are for the calling that we have and to be ready for what is coming next that we
Wendy,
don't
you
know,
got it there.
but it's coming.
Yeah, that's exactly, and I do truly believe that everything prepares us, right? But we have
Yes.
to be whole to be able to engage it. And yeah, a weakness is not taking a step back. That's actually necessity. It's rest. So, like I said, daily discoveries.
And being open to that, right? We're not going to discover if our heads are down or they're in the ground or this is the way that it has to be or it's always been done. You know, I've said it a couple times. I've used the legacy word because the work that we're doing is not, again, just for us, and it's not just about today. What do you hope people say about how you showed up for the mission and then for them as individuals? What do you want to leave?
I want people to say that the belief I have in myself was able to blossom because I understood that someone believed in me.
Hmm.
Right? We can't give belief, right? But we can model it.
Yes.
We can model it and allow for the possibility of transformation, whatever that may look like. Um, so you know, just to be able for someone to say, I didn't realize what was possible until I understood me, until I did the work, right? It's not all, rainbows and, we all, that is not what I'm selling here, right? It is,
No.
it is constant work, but I've realized that even in the work, there has to be joy. To me, joy is an active form of rebellion. We are not, especially in this society, we are not supposed to be joyful. One of my earliest memories, I used to travel all the time for work. And, someone would say to me, you can't be from New York. You smile. Like I'm like, I was like, okay, like there are 6 million of us, but all right, all of us, right? But
You know what?
cool. All right, I'm getting the vibe here. But that, and I realized that the moments that and I say to folks here, if I don't smile or if I don't laugh throughout my day, I say something's wrong, and I'll literally stop a meeting, and I was like, all right, who's got a one liner, right? Because I feel like on so many levels I got into breath work. When you laugh, when you smile, there is something chemical that
Oh, yes.
happens, right? That you just feel that release. So, I feel like part of what I also want people to know is that Tanique said, find what makes me me, right? What grounds me. Some
Mm.
people that's the traditional stuff like yoga or whatever, but it could be something, it could be anything. And I think that's where the discovery and the journey and the observation of learning yourself truly really can take hold when you know for you what you need to help pull you out. Because, even at work, I'll say, you give me a problem, but bring me a solution. People have solutions. I mean, the ability to critically think and to say,
Mm-hmm.
let's try this, that's the untapped here that I want people to say, she helped me tap into. I knew the answer. I knew I was just maybe I had to brush it off a little bit. I had to, have the courage to actually access it. Where I go again with empowerment, are you really able to access the things that are available to you? But she helped me to do that unapologetically.
And that's it, right? You are really ushering people and ambassadoring people into a space of self-awareness. And we say that, like empowerment, that term gets thrown around quite a bit, but there is such power. You can't lead anyone else into anything if you don't know who's showing up in the room, right? So knowing who you are and being confident in that space, confident enough to know where those places of strength and superpower are, and also where that kryptonite and those places of opportunities for growth. But it's got to start there. And that's what I've been so excited about in our conversation is everything that you've brought to us today brings us back to that place and space. It is hard to believe that we're turning the corner on wrapping things up today, but I just want to bring up one more like closing thought here before we close out. For leaders who feel stretched thin, I know that that's none of us, but called to lead with such great heart, what encouragement would you want to offer today and for those emerging leaders coming behind you?
I think it's something that we talked about. It's
Mm.
don't be afraid to take a pause and say, I'm not
Mm.
sure. I'm not sure. One of the things one of my earliest mentors taught me is that always have a point of view. And I took that and I was like, my point of view sometimes is, I don't know.
Oh, wait,
It's this.
let's just sit there. Let's just sit there. A leader who influences actually said, I don't have an answer
I
for
don't
that.
know. I have
Right?
some feelings, but
Oh,
I don't have an answer.
yes. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And
There-
we can't gloss over that. We can't move past that. No, I really appreciate that.
yes, yes. Um and so and I one of my sayings, they call them Taniquisms here, or in different places, is that you know, be getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. That is,
Mm,
if you can do that, I wasn't the most popular kid, just being comfortable with just being uncomfortable, and then you realize, what is that? Everything, nothing is this. How we feel right now is not how we're going to feel at 6 o'clock tonight. Right? Everything is fluid. It really is. What you're
yes.
stressing about, sometimes you don't even remember 3 days
Yeah.
later what that is.
Yeah.
Think about all that wasted energy and time. So sit with it. I also say don't avoid, sit with things,
Mm,
right?
mm-hmm.
Feel them deeply, put them somewhere, and then move on.
And yeah, yeah, yeah. Acknowledge, but then we've got to be able to keep moving. I love it. And Taniquisms, yeah, just keep them coming because they have been profound all day long throughout this conversation. I want to make sure, and here's a little fun for our audience before we wrap up, just a little deeper look into Tanique.
Mhm.
Morning routine.
Mm.
What is the must have that must happen in your morning?
Oh man, we're trying to wing it, but that's that coffee. That
Well,
coffee.
I heard it's a good thing. I mean, it's doing some life-giving stuff. Coffee's not
I
my deal,
get,
but yeah.
and I am a little bit of a coffee snob,
Mm.
and I tried a new one this morning, so it just came back from Dominican Republic, so that Dominican,
Ooh,
that little percolator thing that I always see and fascinated, so that was time. So I also try something new with my morning routine.
nice, nice.
And
Okay.
gratitude. That's the other one when I wake
Oh,
up. When I wake up, I smile and I'm like, what am I grateful for? Sometimes it's that my tummy doesn't hurt or something small. Like it doesn't have to be big at all.
well, but that does change just the trajectory of the day. So I appreciate that. What fills your cup outside of the workplace?
The water. Oh my gosh. Anything water. Anything. I obsess around surfing. I obsess around just being in the water. The water. Anything.
Life-giving. Wow. Love it. I love that. I love that. And then this one, my favorite. What's your favorite ice cream flavor? This is important stuff.
Ooh. Ooh. Oh, what was? Okay, so I am a cookies and cream. I am a cookies and cream, a little caramel, but cookies and
Oh,
cream. I know I added a little bit
now you're
of caramel,
speaking my language.
a little cookies and cream. Yes, yes, yes.
I love it. I love it. Tanique, this has been such an engaging conversation. Your heart for people is not just in word, it's in deed. It comes pouring forth. Your drive to being a culture keeper and your fearless approach to people first leadership has given us so much to chew on today. And that's what I want to encourage the audience. This is not just for here and now. Take it, chew on it, and apply that. Ask these questions of yourself and in your leadership, and then pose them to your sphere of influence. I want to make sure that for anyone listening and they want to learn more about Tanique, they want to learn more about the work that you're leading at Brotherhood Sister Soul, how do they connect best with you and the organization?
LinkedIn is an amazing platform that I use, as well as send me an email, drop me an email at my emails online at Brotherhood Sister Soul, but it's TD at brotherhoodsistersoul.org, and I'm here.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, I know that we're going to all want to learn more about the work that you're doing because as you're leading, this is how you're leading out in just a short conversation. Wow. To be able to see the work that is impacting based on that. You inspired excellence today, my friend. And I just want to again say thank you for the stories that you've shared, just a glimpse into your relational leadership journey. but your passion and your insights, they truly energize and they're lasting. And it's just been a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for this opportunity to share and to be inspired as well. I truly, truly appreciate it, and I look forward to more interactions.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, for our Cultivate collaborators, they know that as we get to this point, it's a wrap today, but we always have to remember that each of us, and we heard it so much today, bring our own special flavor to the mix of relational leadership. So until next time, let's keep stirring things up. Let's make an impact and continue to be better together. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Before we sign off today, I want to send out huge appreciation to our listeners for tuning in. I hope you felt seen, heard, and inspired to level up your own leadership journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you're ready to level up your leadership, asking for a friend, or interested in being a guest on the show, connect with me at cultivateforgood.com. That's cultivateforgood.com. Remember, as leaders, we're either driving progress or we're driving the problem. So let's grow together.